And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another broadcast here on the CranKy Ducklings. Welcome back to the HomeStory Cup 24 Group D Part 2. I'm, of course, your host, Light VIP. With me, I'm joined by my lack of webcam and by the people of Bologna, as I am still here. I believe my third day. It's all blending together in Poland. It's great to be here. It's great to be back, and great to be bringing you some more StarCraft action. Now, it's been a couple of weeks. It's been like 2-3 weeks since our last HomeStory Cup broadcast, basically before Masters Coliseum. Masters Coliseum took up all of our broadcasting time, all of our broadcasting schedule. We were hyper fixated on Masters Coliseum. Now that we are done with it, now that it's wrapped up, we can focus on catching up with everything else. And here we go. As we switch our scenes over, we can have a look at what is to come tonight. Here are our matches. Now, actually, before I get ahead of myself, to give you a bit of a taste, or to remind you what we broadcasted last time, we can have a look here at the first half of the group. Now, HomeStory Cup is an event that occurred in December. I was going to say last month, but actually now more than a month ago. So it was early December of 2023 was HomeStory Cup. And as you can imagine, as we are based mainly in the land of Australia, we did miss out on a lot of the broadcast of it. I was able to tune into some of the playoffs, but I missed out on everything that happened in the group stage. So in case there were also people that were maybe like-minded, maybe they missed out on the group stage, maybe, you know, it was just at a bad time, then we are here to catch up with all the groups. We have already casted all of Group A, Group B, Group C, and now we are here in Group D. And this is what we did broadcast a couple of weeks ago here on the channel, the first half. And something that was interesting about the first half of Group D, as you can imagine, was Raynor. Was the fact that he played Protoss. He played Protoss against Mixu. He did off-race against our Zerg player here with mixed success. It does say 2-0, but it was a very close 2-0, and Mixu, he held his own against Raynor and almost did bring him down as well. So big shout out to Mixu for going toe-to-toe with the Protoss of Raynor. Raynor may be a little bit overconfident. I mean, did 2-0 either way, but alas, was showing that he was not infallible in the PvZ matchup. Likewise, we had Raynor switching back to Zerg against Trigger, of course. We were able to feature Scarlet as well. Shout out to Mixu. Mixu didn't just look good against Raynor, but also went to the ace match against Scarlet as well in that ZVZ. So great to see Mixu able to put on a show there. And meanwhile, we had Hero Marine just kind of really flex. That was the series against Scarlet where Hero Marine did actually go mech, played Cyclone against Scarlet, and I'm curious if Hero Marine is going to play Cyclone again, a mech variation again against Raynor. Switching on over here, we have tonight's matches, the second half of the group. Again, it is a round-robin group stage, so everyone played against each other, and we still have to feature Trigger versus Mixu, Raynor versus Scarlet, Hero Marine versus Raynor, Mixu versus Hydra, and Trigger versus Scarlet as well. So we still have a good 5 best-of-3s ahead of us. We are going to have a break in between, just to kind of break up the matches and to calm things down a little bit. We will most likely have a break after Hero Marine versus Raynor, or before, depending on how long the series are and how deep we go. So we'll have a break in the middle, and then we'll continue the group and end the group stage of HomeStory Cup, the Galactic Battle, as I do have to remind myself that's what it was called. Sorry, Galactic Rumble, that's it. We have the HomeStory Cup Galactic Rumble, then with the House SC2 Cup Galactic Battle, because everything is galactic nowadays. I'm shaking my head. But I hope everyone's been doing well. Massive shout out to Apoptosis in the chat. But the Goblin King himself. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great stream. Hope you had a great time. I know nowadays Apop has kind of taken a break from StarCraft, but I think it was a couple of weeks ago where Apop was lured into casting with Chicken Man. Chicken Man was able to drag Apop on and have him cast a couple of games of StarCraft. So welcome back. Hope that you're able to settle back into either StarCraft or maybe a future RTS like Stormgate or Zero Space. Regardless, good to see you and hope you're doing well. Hope you're taking care of that. Hope you're taking care. Much love to Apoptosis. As of course, we are going to be diving into this. Our first match of the night is going to be Trigger versus Mixu, a PvZ, followed by many other matches. I have to double check. We'll get there. Whether or not Reynor actually off-raced or not against Scarlet, I will be confirming that once we get up to that. And yeah, for now, it's going to be a ZVZ, but it could be a Protoss versus Zerg. I would not be surprised if Reynor does off-race against Scarlet. I mean, if Reynor is willing to off-race against Serral, there's no Zerg player that he shouldn't really be willing to off-race against. I say that, Reynor did have to switch back to Zerg the last time he off-raced against Dark. He had a hard time against Dark, but that's also Dark, to be fair. As we are going to be jumping on into this, and again, game 1 is going to be on Oceanborn as we dive into Trigger versus Mixu. Let's go. Again, both players up-and-comers in their respective regions. Mixu, he's been rising through the ranks over in the land of Europe. Meanwhile, Trigger likewise has risen the ranks, and he is now in the upper echelons of competitive players in the Americas region. I would say that Trigger is up there along the likes of Estrella and Scarlet. Recently, Kelazur has also been vying for that spot, and Kelazur has been doing insanely well in the most recent regionals. We'll see, though. We'll see how our players do perform. As diving into game number 1, we have spawning in the bottom right-hand corner of Oceanborn, the Canadian Protoss player, the red Protoss representing Basilisk. It is Trigger. And spawning in the top left-hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the Finnish Zerg player, the blue Zerg representing Berserker Esports. It is Mixu. Here we go again. Trigger has found more success in his region. I would say that he has, excelled quite a lot in skill. I do think that Mixu is still on his way there. He's still building himself up, still been improving over the past year, over the past couple of months especially. And it's exciting to see that Mixu has been improving. He has been getting better. He's also been traveling quite a lot as well. Mixu, he was at DreamHack Atlanta. He was in the open stage, which was really cool to see him competing there. But we'll see how he does here at HomeStory Cup. He has a lot to prove. He's already done well for himself, forcing Scarlet to the ace match and not looking bad against Reynor's Protoss. But how does he look against Trigger's main race? As for now, he forsake the unnatural. Natural, Probe Scout going to be coming in. Standard opener here at a Mixu. Talking about Mixu a little bit, he's not really much of an aggressive player. Mixu, he's very much so macro-oriented or mid-game oriented. I'm not really familiar with Mixu really going for many like Roach Queen all-ins and Roach Queen walks across the map, or Nidus base all-ins, or cutting workers like sub 50 or sub 60. He can play on 3 base and it can be very 3 base heavy, but again, that's like very mid-game oriented typically from Mixu. Doesn't really spice things up too early on. He's not really one to go gas first or 12 pool or something, at least not in this matchup, at least not in the games that I've seen. And for now, that continues to be true. For now, we do have Trigger back at home, going for his gate expand, throwing down his pylon, looking poised for a Stargate opener. Trigger, likewise, isn't one to deviate too much when it comes to his play in PvZ. Likewise, he's very macro-oriented as well. I haven't really seen too much of Trigger going for like a Twilight Council into Glaive Adepts, for example, or a Twilight Council into DTs. So, should be a Stargate. There we go. Stargate is on the way. We're going to be sinking our teeth into this PvZ, and so far everything is looking as it should. Really, we're looking for any points of deviation once Trigger gets his Stargate up and running. Once we get into Oracles, we should be going for a 3rd base. Once we get our 3rd base up and running, then we're going to be working on our next form of tech. Whether it's a Twilight Council in a Forge, Robo Forge, or Twilight Council on its own, there's a lot available here to Trigger. We'll keep our eye on the Protoss. Meanwhile, it's going to be on Mixu to react, to scout, to react, to drone, to figure out what Trigger is up to respond to it, to try to punish it if at all possible. For now, Trigger just going to be threading a shade in towards the main. Again, trying to get a read on what's going on. Does commit to the shade. Going to pick off the Ling. Only 1 Ling to respond. Can we get a drone? That's the question. Can we get a worker here as we do force out a Spore Crawler? 1 drone does go down, and the Adept is going to be able to escape these Lings. Does shade away towards that 3rd base. At the same time, Queens are lying in wait, though. Oh, the Adept taking a lot of damage here. The Adept is gonna go down. A little bit of a greedy maneuver there at a Trigger. Does trade 1 for 1. Did get a couple of Lings, but the downside is he loses an Adept. That may not sound like a lot. It's like, oh, he just lost an Adept. that does mean that this third is that much more vulnerable. Usually you have 2 Adepts here. Usually 2 Adepts with SimCity, and you protect the third base, but the Lings have arrived. There's only 1 Adept here, and we can dive on it. It's so low from earlier. The Adept, it's battered, it's bruised, and the Adept, it should go down. We get a kill on the probe, and this is all because 1 Adept died across the map. Again, that's why these first couple of units are so important here for Protoss, and Trigger is delayed as a result. Still gets it up and running, but again, it was slowed down quite a bit due to Mixu taking advantage of the situation. Lings, they arrive once again, they go for the probe, and they will barely... Can they get it up? Up! They will! Probe goes down, we get a free scout of the main base as the wall was not a wall at the same time. Oracle does get across the map, but no damage is dealt, as Yorku is still looking for a way in, but the Queens, they do keep up with the rotations for the most part. Yeah, no economic damage being done here. So far, a good defense out of Mixu, a free scout of the main base. He confirms the continued Oracle production. He also sees a lack of additional tech for now. And there is our transition, and the Ling does confirm. The Ling did see the Twilight Council at least. Is somewhat aware of the transition, and honestly, so far, Mixu is playing well. He's playing quite well here. He's keeping up with Trigger, punishing him at times, and Trigger needs to tighten things up here. Now, what I will say is that thankfully, Trigger hasn't lost any of his Oracles. He still has 3 Oracles active on the map. He's still looking for a way in. Hasn't found too much damage yet, but can always threaten his opponent. Ooh, as he does take quite a bit of hull damage again. Mixu, he was lying in wait, he was in position. Behind this, Forge and Twilight Council, there should be +1 in Blink. We have seen charge variations, but yeah, Blink is going to be on the way here for Trigger as he builds up towards the mid-game, towards eventually Blink Stalker aggression. Now, the next big thing, as Mixu is going to have to hold on to his 4th base, but yo, with 3 Oracles, we can force a cancel. Queens are waddling on in, but I think it's too little too late. This base, it's going to be denied. Yeah, the Oracles, they do focus it down, and that's... No! That's gonna be a kill, not a cancel. The first big mistake here from Mixu. Ay, ay, ay. That is 300 minerals down the drain. Again, just a little bit too late to react there, a little bit too late to cancel, and suddenly, any small advantages that Mixu once had, not really there anymore. Not anymore. Not after losing that base in such a manner, and... Now suddenly Trigger's in the driver's seat. He's building up towards +1, towards Blink. Ling's going to be trying to harass here at the 3rd base location, but Trigger is perfectly fine, working towards his robo. There's no big gateway explosion, so we're not really committing too hard. We're pushing, yes, that is true. We are moving out. We are vying for map control, but nothing too major yet here, which means Mixu has time to build up. He has time to recover. He's double expanding. He needs to. Double expanding at this point, taking up towards a Roach Warren. Infestation bit would be Hive Tech as well. Mixu is being quite greedy here, and he needs to be greedy to catch up with that lost base earlier with the lost economy. Trigger has the better economy right now because of that dead 4th. Trigger continues to apply pressure. Again, he doesn't really intend to commit, but if he can get a Queen, that'll be ideal, and it looks like he will get one. Queen goes down, no transfuse available. Lings, they try to get us around going, but the Oracles are here to support, and the Lings, they cannot touch this. They cannot touch these Stalkers. Again, a good kind of location, good engagement there from Trigger. Does blunder that recall, though. Blunder the blink, I should say. The recall forced to try to evacuate here, but a couple of Stalkers do go down. Big moment for Mixu. He kills how many? 3 Stalkers. Not bad. 3 Stalkers do go down. And behind this, we're droning. We're droning as hard as we can. We're trying to saturate our 4th base. We're using our 5th just for lava. We're trying to get things back up and running. Mixu working towards Ling Roach Ravager. Actually, Roach into Hydra. Okay, Mixu looks like he wants to head towards Hive Tech, towards Lurkers, which makes sense, right? The Hive is already on the way. Lurkers should be on the horizon as well. If Trigger is passive, then Mixu can get away with this. And thankfully for Mixu, a couple of things are going his way. 1, 4th base. We have a 4th base in production. Ling's going to be dealt with here. A couple of probes go down. But again, a 4th is on the way, and we're teching. We're not going for a gateway explosion. We're going for a bay. We're going for a Temple of Archives, +2 charge. Trigger, again, isn't pushing anytime soon. He is making 2 Colossi at a time, but by the time he has 4 Colossi, by the time he can be active, Mixu should be able to build up towards Lurker Tech. Like, Trigger, there should be a little bit of urgency. on the side of Trigger, but I don't think he really has any. He doesn't know how much danger he's in. He doesn't realize what we're taking up towards. Oh, we do scout those Vipers, though. Big revelation from Trigger. He's aware of the Hive Tech, at least. But even though he's aware, he can't really do anything about it. Not anymore. Big stasis. Oh, my God. Massive stasis trap here on those Lings. Roaches are going to be forced back at the same time. Lings, they try to go for a big counterattack, but there's a Colossus lying in wait. Overcharge is popped. The Roaches, they're not going to do much here. They're going to kill maybe a couple of workers. They can maybe threaten that Colossus as well. Can they actually bring it down? It's going to be close. It is going to be close, and it looks like the Colossus up will barely hold on. Does barely survive as well. Big commitment there from Mixu. Doesn't get any damage done. At the same time, he collapses here on these Stalkers. Overcharges on cooldown. But there's a little bit too much here in position. Trigger, he is holding. He forces this back. Lurkers are now on the way. Vipers are building up. We do have a decent army that is in the works here for Mixu. But as time goes on, Trigger is getting further and further ahead. Like, he's got his Colossi Immortals on the way. Mixu has to be very careful. It feels like he wants to push in, but I'm not really sure if he has to be this aggressive, to be honest. Like, I don't think Mixu has to be in the face of Trigger. I think, again, Mixu needs time to build up his Lurkers. If he pushes in now too early, then he may lose everything. Uh-oh. Speaking of, we are pushing on forward here. There's almost nothing protecting these Lurkers at the same time, though. A big counterattack. We force a recall. A big moment here as Trigger is forced to recall back home to deal with this army, which means these Lurkers are left safe. Or are they? We left just enough back at home, and it looks like we get one Lurker. One Lurker goes down. We barely don't have enough to get the others. Meanwhile, 21 probes for these Lings. They go ham. Oh my god, the +2 melee Lings. They just wreak havoc here. They do clean up this middle line. 21 probes go down, and the Lurkers, they're slowly pushing forward. Again, there aren't a lot of Lurkers. I'm concerned that Mixu is overextending, but he has crippled the economy, and he does slip in with a couple of Roaches. Does get into the natural base. Probes are going down, and Mixu doing quite well here. And here we go. 6 Lurkers on the way. This will actually produce a decent army. 10 Lurkers in total with Vipers, with Ling Hydra. Mixu not looking too bad. Big Ling counterattack here on the right hand side. The Vipers are a little bit exposed. It looks like one Viper goes down for free. But we come in from behind. We yoink one of the Colossus. We get one. We get two. And both Colossi will go down. Looking at the units tab here. 0 Colossus left. We're trying to get into Immortal production. Trigger, he's trying to refine his army. Trying to deal with these Lurkers. But it's too little too late. We have hit critical mass of Lurkers. Mixu, he has done it. He did stumble a little bit here and there. But for the most part, he did correctly identify that he could rush into Lurkers, that he could take advantage of Trigger. The Trigger was being a little bit too tech heavy, and Mixu, he got away with it. The 4th base is going to be going down. Stalkers, they try to catch reinforcements. They do catch a bunch of Queens. Queens are going to be going down, but at the same time, though, this 4th base will fall, and Trigger, he's stuck on 3 bases. He's going to try and wrap around, but alas, Mixu does get eyes on this. Where's the detection? No detection inside. No observer. There's only one Oracle. Ay. Only one Oracle here. Bit of a charge lot Archon run by. Army pushing forward, but there are Lurkers to defend. And again, with no detection, how do we push in? We don't. We cannot push in. Trigger cannot do anything about this army. Zealots are being cleaned up. Drones did go down, but we try to push into Lurkers and we lose so much in the process. Now, Mixu did lose 14 drones. His economy is not looking too hot, and hey, it looks like we do clean up most of these. Oh my god, never mind! Most of the Lurkers, but no, we do get some massive spine shields off here on the army. Big revelation, we do clean this up. Trigger double expanding right now, trying to resaturate his 4th base. Trigger does have an army, does have a lot of Immortals. Looking at our units tab here, 6 Immortals of the army. Do almost get one of those Vipers. Not the best yoinks. We get a Stalker and a Zealot, but, you know, efficient trades nonetheless. As the Ling run by does threaten those High Templar. Storm is not done. No Storms here for the Protoss. Zealot run by, doing what it can, threatening drones here, threatening the mineral line. But shouldn't really be able to achieve too much here as the main armies are about to clash once again. The Lurker! No. Oh, that's okay. We're all on move command. It's all good. The lurker does manage to waddle away. Now, when it comes to this game state here, I still want to give the edge to Mixu, but Trigger is actually making more workers. He's got a slightly better economy. He's building up his immortal count, but he is out of position. Oh my god, incredibly slow. Mixu pushes in towards the third base, towards the fourth. He's going for the kill. He's going to cripple the economy here of Trigger, and Trigger's going for a base trade. There's no turning back. There's no turning around. A full-on base trade here, but this has to be in favor of Mixu. Trigger, he loses 34 probes. Mixu can turn back around. At the same time, Trigger going to be collapsing on this army. Does have an observer. The lurkers are going ham. They're getting so much damage done. And yeah, we cannot push in. Not into these lurkers. Not into these bases. Meanwhile, Trigger, his economy in shambles. Trying to get another base up and running. He still has a decent immortal count. But we still have so much in favor of Mixu. As he picks apart the army, gets an Archon. Snipes the observer. And Trigger behind this, he's barely limping along here. Trying to move out. Does now have Storm in 10 seconds. But it may just be too little too late. Storm is something that we did need far earlier. And here we go, Mixu. Going for the final engage, diving on the army. Show us the storms. With storms, we can still take a fight. Just one, though. We don't really have the economy to sustain a remax. Yeah, oh my god, massive storms on the Hydras. The best storms that Trigger could have hoped for. But even with that, he's still behind. Oh, yoinks an immortal. An Archon, another immortal. Big storm here on the Hydras. But again, Mixu can take a couple storms to the face. He can afford to lose a chunk of his army, and he will still be okay. Storms once again zone back Mixu. You can see that the army supply is actually quite close. Oh my god, the Hydra's going to be going down. Is there a world? Okay, we do deny the 5th base. If Trigger can somehow get on top of these lurkers, the problem is, okay, he does have detection. He had detection, no longer. Observer gets sniped. Observer does get abducted. Another observer is on the way. Without observers, Mixu has time to rebuild. Once again, he can remax. I mean, I say remax, just rebuild his army. Get a couple more lurkers up and running. And Trigger, he's backing off. Resaturating. He has an economy. Somewhat. Feedback. Oh, 1 second too late. Do yoink them in. Mortal goes down. At the same time, big zealot counterattack here. Actually, Trigger, he's going to get a kill in this base. Does get a kill in the hatchery. Mixu is suddenly hurting here. You can see how little resources he has. He's got a couple of patches here at the natural, one patch in the main, a couple of patches at the third base. No mining, no full base. Trigger, are we pulling this off? I mean, he's been preserving a lot of his immortals. Like, he has 7 immortals. 1-to-1 with the ultras. Big storm. Oh, the ultras are getting caught out. Ultras? Sorry, lurkers is what I meant to say. The lurkers are getting caught out. One lurker gets picked off. The army trying to engage. Big storm here on the Hydras. Mixu, so much was going his way. He was crippling the economy. He was shutting Trigger down. But these storms have been insane, and the immortal count is still very much so high. Still up and running. We force back the Hydras. Trigger has controlled this game. The big deciding factor, the economy. The fact that Mixu doesn't have a mining base. Like, he's got like half, if not a third of the base here, and even here at the natural. Trigger is just fully mining at his 4th. And Trigger, he rotates, he finds another hatchery, he's gonna get a kill. Gonna force a cancel. Does force a cancel. Army comes in from the right hand side. We get on top of a queen. We get one queen. We're gonna get another as well. And another. GG gets called, and Trigger, he does it. He bounces back in a very close game. And we'll take game number 1. Ooh, GG. Papi. GG, well played. A bit of a roller coaster ride of emotions there where things were in favor of one player, then another. Trigger, he was struggling a little bit there. Again, we did mention how Trigger, he had a bit of an advantage early on, and he took that advantage and he decided to go for a fourth base, tech up into double robo, be very passive, but build up towards a stronger later game, rushing into all that Colossus production essentially, and all the tech as well. Meanwhile, when Mixu realized what was happening, when he saw that Trigger was going to be passive, what did he do? Well, he double expanded and he teched up into Hive. He teched up into Lurkers, got into Lurker tech, and with that Lurker tech, Mixu was dominating. He was achieving so much. He was counterattacking, he was defending, he was trading very well here against the Protoss. But a couple of fights went awry. A couple of fights went the way of Trigger. Big storms were connecting. Trigger was pulling his opponent apart with Zealot run-bys. Very impressive. Very impressive. And given the game state, given how difficult things were for Trigger, for him to hold on, to bounce back, to fight back, and to take game one. Impressive stuff. GG. GG, well played. With that, Trigger takes a lead in the series, and now we're going to be getting into game number 2 on Hardlead. A big shout out in the chat. Oh, I see Chileno, Singaporean. I see Psych as well. Hello, welcome, welcome. Again, shout out to Babylings for the first Quacker, alive in the wired, easy fill. Rafroff. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Here we go. And now spawning in the bottom right hand corner of Hardlead, we have our red Protoss player representing Basilisk, the Canadian Protoss. It is a Trigger. And spawning in the top left hand corner, we have as opponent, we have the blue Zerg player representing Berserker Esports, the Finnish Zerg. It is Mixu. We go. Hola de Argentino, papi. Oh, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Buenas noches, buenas noches. Hello, ¿qué tal? Pecoeta in the chat as well. Hope you've all been enjoying yourselves, and I hope you're all enjoying this kind of lull in content. There's a reason why we have the freedom, the time right now to go over some of these replays, to go over some of these matches that have been, around for a while, is because I am Katowice. It is in a couple of days. It's in less than a week. Be sure to mark your calendars and be there for the event. Enjoy the celebration of StarCraft that is to come. And again, this is just a good way to warm up towards it. And yeah, Trigger, he did end up winning that last game, but again, he had to fight for it. He had to fight hard for that win. It was not easy whatsoever, which is impressive. Like, in general, I would rate Trigger a little bit higher than Mixu. I don't think Mixu has really had the opportunity to really shine too hard. Has, of course, been competing in his regionals for ESL Masters Winter in the European regionals, and has been quite active in the online tournament scene, but is still yet to really break into the upper echelons of even the higher mid-tier Zergs in Europe. When I think of the other Zerg players in Europe, I still think of players like Young Yakov higher, Wayne of course higher as well. There's a lot of competition in Europe, and it's hard to really stand out, hard to really shine. But really great to see Mixu, of course, fighting back here against the best Protoss in Canada, the best Protoss in all of Canada, and we'll see if Mixu can bounce back here and force the ace match. For now, standard openers. Hatch gas pool here from Mixu. Force take the unnatural. Trigger going for a gate expand into Cybercore into our tech of choice. It is going to be another Stargate opener, as to be expected, but we are loading into Hardlead. Hardlead, short rush distance by ground. Short rush distance by ground can lend quite well to these Roach Queen all-ins, and based on this third base location, the triangular third, it would be really good to spread creep across map, to turn this base into a bit of a creep launch pad to get across map to facilitate for an all-in, assuming that's going to be the case here. This is something that is available to Mixu if he wants to try to make use of it and try to make use of this creep. Otherwise, you could just go for a bit of a longer game instead. We'll keep our eyes mainly on Mixu here, as once again, it's going to be an Oracle first. Oracle first into a third base, into triple Oracle production, just like game number 1. Hola, vecino. As Adepts, they do get into the middle line. 2 drones go down. This time, Trigger being much more attentive to his units. Remember, last game, Trigger, he lost an Adept, and that snowball out of control that meant that his 3rd base was delayed. This time, he keeps both Adepts alive. He does manage to escape. Buenas noches. Un abrazo, papi. Oh, abrazo, papi. Abrazo. Anda mi mid. Good to hear you're doing well. As for now, we're just setting up here on 3 bases. Spores on the way. We're droning up as we speak. Meanwhile, a couple of Lings, they do slip in. The wall is not a wall. The wall, it was wide open. We get 4 probe kills here in the natural base. That's quite a lot of damage, and we're not done yet. We're looking for another probe kill. We get a 5th. We get a 5th worker. Can we get a 6th? We can barely not. The Adepts, they make it back into the main base. Again, Trigger, he was in position to protect his 3rd, not in position to wall off. It's still wide open, by the way. Probes, they're being pulled back over. Lings finally get cleaned up, but that was a lot of damage. That was insane. You can see here the economy going deep into the blue in the aftermath. 6 drones went down. Sorry, 6 probes went down for only a handful of Lings. These Oracles, they got a lot of work to do. They get 1 drone kill, they get 2, but they take a lot of hull damage. Trigger does have to back off. At the same time, Trigger, he tries to dip into the main base. We have an interesting follow-up. This looks like potentially charge. We're going for double forge. We're going for Twilight Council into double forge, double upgrades. Very interesting choice here for Trigger. This does mean that Trigger can hit a really strong timing with 2-2. Like a really strong 2-2 timing is going to be available here for Trigger as he is working towards, yep, charge, which is what we assumed. Charge benefits the most from armor upgrades just because you need those zealots to actually close the distance and get on top of your roaches and hydras and lurkers as well. So it is going to be, I imagine, Charge Lot Archon out of Trigger. Meanwhile, we do see Mixu back at home chilling, droning up, working towards roaches. Now the Oracles are still being very active. Adepts, they do shade into that 3rd base once again. Drones are going to be going down. Get a couple of workers here. Meanwhile, across the map, the Oracles still threaten a dive. Still do threaten a way in. We do commit, actually, and we're going to get a couple more workers. I mean, 4 workers in total. It's okay, but the Oracles did take a lot of damage. We did lose a lot of the Adepts, or the Adept count was reset. Trigger. When do we pull the trigger here? We have a big gateway explosion. Okay, it's going to be 8 gates. 8 gates alongside charge. Oh, actually, 4 gates in the main. 2 gates here at the natural. 6 gates for the timing. There we go. 8 gateways in total for Trigger. Going to be with 1-1. I imagine he's going to be moving out with his Archons. As in, as soon as the Temple Archives is done, we will be pushing. And can Mixu survive is the question. Or was another 2 workers go down? Mixu, though, going to be cutting workers here at 3-base saturation. Mixu already building up towards roaches. We have +1 range. We have roaches that are amassing. We have decided here to cut workers. This is what we spoke about. So Mixu, he's cutting workers at 66. That is 3-base saturation. We're done droning, and now we max out with pure roaches. Now what's important here is that these roaches don't have the best upgrades either. We have +1 range. We have not started +2. Instead of +2, we're hyperfixated on just building up even more roaches. And this just so happens to be coinciding with Trigger pushing. Trigger, he is pushing here with his timing of 1-1. 1-1 is about to finish up, but we have more than enough to deal with this. We clear up some of that creep. We're trying to lure the army further into the bases here of Mixu. Roaches, they do reveal themselves. Roach speed still on the way. We try to engage. Good transfuses here from the Queens. Roaches, they barely do hold on here. Good kiting from Mixu as well. The Zealots are getting damage done. They do pick off a couple of roaches. A lot of roaches, actually. Zealots are breaking through. But as I say that, they're being cleaned up. And what is left here with the army? There's 1 Archon remaining. There used to be an Archon remaining, and no longer. We shut it down, and now we trigger a massive counterattack. And remember, Mixu cut workers at 66. He hasn't made a drone in a good 3 minutes. And Trigger, he's been probing. He's been probing, taking an expansion, taking up into 2-2, working towards immortal production. He's been working on that next step when Mixu, he's here and now in his face. He's here in the face of Trigger. Trigger, he has to give up the base. Nexus will fall. No, we just ignore it. We just keep on pushing anyway. Keep on pushing towards the bases here of Trigger. He's up against the wall. He's building up a couple of Archons. He's got an Immortal. The Queens, they have arrived. Creep is being spread. Technically, it is a Roach Queen all in. Technically. Zealot run by. Ooh, wreaking havoc here back at home. But Mixu doesn't care. Remember, he's all in. He doesn't care about his economy. He doesn't care about his fourth base. Reinforcements will clean up those Zealots, and now we can focus on our main push. Focus on breaking into the natural. Other Wiles, they take down the Stasis Trap. Will not connect. Now, Mixu, he's maxed out. He's at 200 supply already, and he has to pick and choose. Does he push into the natural, or does he push into the third base, or why not both? Porque no los dos? As he catches the Immortal. The Immortal goes down. Big pick off there. Immortal falls, Archon as well, and Trigger, he just doesn't have enough to really fight against this. He has a lot of shield batteries, but what good can they do here? Against all these roaches, there's just a death ball of an army. Mixu shuts down the army, shuts down the site defenses. A handful of units remaining here. There's one Immortal on the right-hand side, I believe. One Immortal over towards the left. They go for a desperate warp in of Stalkers. But again, there's just too much. Just a wave of Zerg crashing into the third, crashing into the natural. And Trigger cannot stop it. GG gets called. We are going to the ace match. GG, well played. Mixu, again, having a much stronger game here. He had a really interesting start as well. Remember, he killed a lot of probes. He was able to somehow slip into the main, slip into the natural with a bunch of lings. He killed so many workers early on. He set himself up for success. We saw that Trigger in the aftermath was being a little bit greedy and being very tech heavy. He ended up hitting his 1-1 timing, but he wasn't really reinforcing. And the problem was that as Trigger was trying to recover and trying to work on that next step, it was Mixu who had cut workers. Mixu, he had cut drones very early on. He had cut workers at 66, if you remember. It was a 3-base all-in out of Mixu, and Trigger didn't realize. He didn't realize how all-in Mixu was and how committed he was to his push. As a result, Trigger was caught with his pants down, and now we're getting into the ace match. We're getting into game number 3. Let's go. Game number 3 going to be up next here. And it's going to be taking place on Site Delta. Here we go. And spawning in the bottom right hand corner of Site Delta, we have our Canadian Protoss player, the Red Protoss representing Basilisk. It is Trigger. Is being forced into the ace match, and spawning in the top left hand corner we have his opponent. We have the Finnish Zerg player tying up the series, forcing game number 3. Can he go the distance? Can he go all the way? The Finnish Zerg player representing Berserker Esports, it is Mixu. It all comes down to Site Delta, and we'll see. I mean, both players had their moments. They both had their advantages. I think what's a little bit concerning is that even in the game that Trigger won, Mixu was ahead. Mixu, he was ahead in that game. He was in a lead, and Trigger had to fight so hard for that lead, or to fight back in that game and to even things up, to close things out. So it doesn't bode well here, but again, maybe Trigger just needed to warm up, and maybe he can perform better here in the ace match. We'll see. We shall see. As for the time being, it is going to be a Hatch Gas Pool standard opener out of Mixu. Meanwhile, Trigger going for a Gate Expand into a Cybercore standard opener as well. We spoke about this before, about how, again, Mixu, he does thrive in the mid game, and even as we just saw in that last game, 3-base all-ins, like that's as aggressive as I feel like Mixu will get. I don't expect like 2-base all-ins or gas first or like a Bane bust. Not really his MO, but we'll see. We'll see if he does bring something different, something new to the table here. As for now, standard openers all around. Trigger should be working and teching towards his Stargate, towards Oracle production. Likewise, Mixu back at home, just going to be droning on up, working towards his queens, working towards a handful of lings, and there it is, ling speed is on the way. Is going to be on the way here. There's that third base on time as well. So again, not a 2-base all in. We're just droning, we're just chilling, just working on map control. There's that Stargate that we spoke about. And again, this should be an Oracle. This should be an Oracle opener out of Trigger. He shouldn't be deviating too much. I mean, personally, I would love for him to mix in a Void Ray first. But I don't know if, again, Trigger's that kind of player. Void Ray openers are so very aggressive and they allow you to catch your opponent off guard. Again, I doubt that's going to be the case this game, as yep, there it is, Oracle first here from Trigger. Once again, 3 games in a row. Now, what's important is that so far in this series, despite the constant Oracle openers, Trigger hasn't really found any damage. The damage that he's dealt has been mainly off of Adepts. He's maybe killed like 4 drones at a time, but nothing too major, no critical damage. Mixu, his queen positioning, his queen defense, so far at least, has been on point. Has been on point here. We'll see if that continues. As the Adepts, they do get in towards that natural base. Good positioning here, making use of the terrain, making use of the mineral patches to reduce that surface area. As we do shade in towards that third base, we do focus on a couple of workers. Up. We do get a handful. 2 drones barely go down, but the queens are in position. We focus on the Oracle. And the Oracle does fall. 4 workers for 2 Adepts and 1 Oracle. That is not a good trade for Trigger. That is brutal. So big win here for Mixu. Trigger bleeding out a lot of units back at home, working on his second forge, working on his second Oracle, into a third Oracle, into a forge behind this. Forge first. Interesting. I'm curious if this is going to be a Forge Robo opener. Keep our eye here on Trigger as the Lings, they get in and they get 2 probe kills already. A free scout of the main base, a 3rd probe goes down. Those Lings, they have arrived here at the 3rd base location, just punishing Trigger here. And still no Twilight Council or Robo. This is very late. Just really late tech here from Trigger. Lings are racing back home, making sure we're safe and sound. Oracles are moving out. We do have a 3rd Oracle on the way. So it looks like because we had to make the 3rd Oracle, we delayed our tech in favor of, using that gas elsewhere. Oracles, they ignore the queens. They go for the natural base. They get a couple more drones. Not bad. This time, both Oracles do escape. At the same time, Adepts, they do shade into that 3rd base. They get another 4 drones, though. 8 workers in total. Better trades here for Trigger. Necessary trades considering the game state. And there it is. It's a Robo. So this is a very tech-heavy style. This is the Showtime way of playing PvZ, where you go for Forge into Robo into double Robo production. Just, again, a really tech-heavy style. Not very active. There's no Blink Stalkers. There's no Charge Lots. There's no way for Trigger to really be too assertive here in the early to mid-game. The Oracles, they do threaten. They kill 12 drones in total here with the Oracle in the main and the Oracles at the 3rd base location. Looking at the unit slots tab, 7 drones in total. Pretty good damage. Pretty good damage here. Meanwhile, as we mentioned, Trigger is going double Robo. So double Robo into Bay, into, I imagine, Colossus production. Oh, never mind. We're going into Immortals. Okay, I was not expecting that. So we have Immortal production instead. Immortal production instead here for Trigger. But this should be for Charge Lot Archon plus Immortal. We shouldn't be working towards Blink, I imagine. But we'll see. Behind this, we do have Mixu going for his own tech of choice. Lair is finishing up. He is skipping his Roach Warren. That is interesting. So Mixu is going into Lingbane. He's going into Lingbane, I imagine, into Hydra. So very bold here to avoid those Roaches. Roaches, they're typically a very safe way to play. And, yep, there it is. So Lingbane Hydra coming out from Mixu. Really risky. It's such a fragile army unit composition. Again, Lings, Banes, Hydras, they melt to either Colossus or Storm. And we are so lucky, by the way. We are so lucky that Trigger is making Immortals and not Colossi. Otherwise, Trigger would just be running away with this. As I say that, Hydrogen has been scouted. We are working towards the Temple Archives, and we should be prioritizing Storm. Storm is going to be crucial here in the defense. Immortals are okay, but they're not amazing against Hydras. Or Lings. Or those Lings. And here we go. The Ling Bane is going to be rolling on in. Good connections on all those Zealots. Force field is thrown down. And big Baneling connections here on those Zealots as well. They all get completely cleaned up. A good trade from Mixu. He doesn't break into the mineral line, but he does trade very well against the main army. Meanwhile, look at that immortal count. Oh my god. 5 immortals already. We're doubling down, working on 7. Gateway explosion on the way. Can this work out? So, immortals in high numbers can actually do well against lurkers, as we saw previously. But against Lingbane Hydra, they don't really do well at all. I am concerned here for Trigger. I'm concerned that this army is just a little bit too subpar. And Mixu, he's maxing out. He's maxing out on Lingbane Hydra. Oracle does get knocked out. Behind this, Mixu building up a death ball of an army. Just maxing out on Lings, Banelings, and those Hydras, of course. We do see Trigger doing the best he can to distract his opponent. Big supply block for Mixu, by the way. There it is. 6 Overlords in production. 3 Dropper Lords on the way behind this as well. Interesting. Okay. Dropper Lords, of course, they have a lot of potential. And here we go. Mixu pushing towards the north. At the same time, we have a Ling run by towards the center. Drop Lords into the main. More Lings are in position. We do dive on top of the army. And they crash into the Zealots. Archons, they have to respond, which means there is an opening. Suddenly, there's an opening here in the main base. And Lings, they do flood in towards the natural. They focus down the shield battery. Lings dropping into the main. And Mixu does threaten the main army here. Picks up an Archon. An Archon trades against some of the Immortals. Lane drop isn't going to achieve too much. Mixu doesn't actually trade too well harassing, but he did deny the 4th. He did delay the 4th base for as long as he could, and he still has a threatening force. And there we go. He stutter steps forward, picks up another Archon, and gets a second Archon. He comes in from behind. And the final Archon is going to be going down. We still have a lot of Immortals, though. 10 Immortals in total. Prism going to be forced down. The Immortals, they're getting caught out by the Lings, by the Hydras, and Trigger just does not have enough to deal with this. Again, his army is not ideal against Ling Hydras whatsoever. We needed Colossus, we needed Storm, we needed Disruptor, we needed some kind of splash damage, not Mass Immortal. And just like that, Mixu, he's just stutter stepping forward, focusing down every single high-tech unit, every single Immortal going to be falling here. And only Stalkers and Zealots do remain. GG gets called, and Mixu takes the series 2-0. GG. Oh. GG, well played. Congratulations here to Mixu as he does take the series 2-1 and does take down Trigger. A big win here for Mixu. Trigger was coming in as the favored player here. Trigger, he is one of the best in the Americas, period. And for Mixu to bring him down, to bring him low, that's crazy. That's beautiful. GG, well played. A big win here for Mixu, and hopefully it bodes well for what is to come. Bodes well for what is to come in the future here for Mixu, leading into, of course, on the new year, leading into future DreamHacks, future IEMs. Do look for, or even future HomeStory Cups. Do look forward to it. And with that, we are going to be getting ready for our next series. Again, when it comes to just quickly touching on that game as well, it did look like maybe Trigger was hoping that there would be lurkers. Like, if you remember, Trigger, he scouted. He saw the Hydrogen. He saw the Hydrogen pretty early on. Not when it was building, but when it finished. And he still chose to avoid splash damage. In that moment, he could have made the decision to create a robotics bay, to throw down a Temple Archives, to start up Storm. He already had a Temple Archives, could have started up Storm. We do need some kind of splash damage against Ling, Bane, Hydra. Against Immortal-based compositions, Immortals, they struggle so much against everything that Mixu had there. Just in a head-to-head fight, there was just nothing that Trigger could really do. He was maybe a little bit stubborn. Maybe a little bit stubborn with his army composition. Again, like, Mass Immortal can work really well against Roaches, and against Lurkers, and against Ultras. Against Hydras, not so much. And we saw that showcased here. Even though Trigger had 10 Immortals, by the way. He had 10 Immortals. They couldn't really trade with the army. They couldn't really engage. And Mixu, he had a much easier time fighting head-to-head and toe-to-toe with what Trigger had. So GG. GG. Well played. Beautiful.